Hello,
listening in.
everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Yeah, another fantastic show today. In fact, when the show finishes at 8 o'clock, at Harper I'm on Andy's show tonight. I forgot his last name, and it's stupid. Andy Coates show tonight, 8:30 on Andy Coates show tonight, 8:30 till 10 o'clock. So it's going to be a long night for me, but never mind. I'm sure we'll get through it all. Yeah, my guest tonight is Pete Efford. Pete has been described as a highly gifted platform medium, deep trance medium, psychic surgeon, spiritual healer. He has led an extraordinary in and out of spirit world and experienced many credible, magical, miraculously events during the last 35 years. That has been both amazing and sometimes terrifying. Can we please welcome Pete to the show? Hello there.
Hi, thank you, Bob. Welcome to you too.
Thank you. How did your journey begin?
Well, my grandparents were both mediums, and I think I've inherited the gift. I mean, from an early age, I was aware of spirits behind people, be waving to me and things when I was a child. And I'd be waving back, and my mother would be saying, "Well, who are you waving to?" And I'd say, "The man over there." And she'd pull her face, so just thought it was all child's imagination. So I've always kind of been aware of stuff going on, but it wasn't until my late 20s that I really got seriously interested in it. I'd seen a few apparitions, I'd seen things build from the floor, fly across the room and all that kind of thing, a few scary things. But in my late 20s, my mother said to me she'd joined this group in Bristol, and the medium's face would change into different people's faces.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I've got to come and see this. So I went along, and my father died when I was quite young. And I'm sat in this room, and I was right on the end of a semicircle of chairs. And I'm trying to see, and it's very dark in there with a dim red light on this guy's face. And I couldn't see much. So I was kind of squinting at it, thinking, oh, this is a load of rubbish. And then he turned his head to me, and his face morphed into my father's face unequivocally. And he smiled at me, and my hair stood on end. I knew 100% it was him. And I drove home, and it felt like my dad was sat on the back seat of my car. And when I got home, the house was all locked up. And when I got home, the last thing he gave me before he passed was one of those old-fashioned cassette tape recorders.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I'd put it away in a cupboard. I couldn't even tell you where it was. And there it was in the middle of my front room floor with the lid open. And someone had pressed play and record, and the wheels were going round. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I looked at this thing and I thought, how was that got out of a cupboard somewhere and landed on the front room floor? So I was a little bit freaked out, and I went to bed. And a couple of hours later, I thought I had burglars. The noise in the house was unbelievable. I ran down the stairs, burst into the front room, and someone had turned the TV on in the darkness and was flicking through the channels with the volume up full. So every time I hit a channel with a TV station on it, the TV was blasting out.
Oh, God.
So I turned it off, and it never did it before, and it never did it again after. But it was enough to say to me, okay, someone's trying to get my attention here, most likely my father. So I joined that group in Bristol and started sitting there each week. And pretty soon it all started happening to me. The first thing that happened was I was sat there, I was actually bored to tears after a long day at work, waiting for my turn to speak. And spirit came in and started to move my arms. And when you're a kid, you stand in a door frame, and you put your arms on the frame and you press for about 30 seconds. And when you walk out, it feels like your arms are floating upwards with an invisible force. It was that kind of a force. I could have stopped it, but I just let it go. And it wasn't just up, it was all over the place. And I had this euphoric feeling of energy waves going through me at the same time. And that was the very first physical trance moment, if you like, the first time energy blended with me. And then as I sat over the months, I started to channel people in the groups, relatives. I would relive a car crash. I had one lad, I suddenly felt this energy descend over me, and I felt my mouth filling up with water and mud. Not really, but that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And as I went deeper and deeper into this, he suddenly burst through and he shouted, "Mum!" And this woman said, "Yes, Ernest." And she'd spotted him and she recognized him. And he came through to beg her forgiveness. He'd been on Clifton Suspension Bridge and he'd been taunting his girlfriend that he was going to jump.
Oh,
And she couldn't bear to watch and she turned her back. When he went to climb down, he slipped and was gone.
Oh.
So he hadn't meant to jump. And obviously it caused a lot of upset. And he came through and weirdly, my eyes were streaming with tears, even though I personally felt no physical emotion. And when I came back to the room, the whole room's crying. I was like, "Oh, what's happened? What's happened here?" And going into trance is a bit like if you sit in your kitchen and close your eyes and you have the TV on in the front room, but it's your voice coming out of the TV at the same time. So you can hear it, but you don't know what's going to be said next. The words are just coming through.
Yeah.
So that's how it all started. And then I sat in that trance group. And then I moved to a different one up in Gloucester and sat there for quite a few years. And we practiced giving clairvoyant messages and we practiced doing the trance stuff. And I moved around 2 or 3 groups before I ended up starting my own trance group. But it was in one of those groups, which I'll come on to in a bit, actually, about angels.
Yeah.
And how, because I'm an engineer, I've had a very eclectic life. I've started in engineering. I did mechanical engineering. Then I did electronic engineering. Then I ended up with becoming a sales engineer, sales manager, sales director, then started my own companies. I've invented a few products along the way. I did the security tagging system for PC World curries and boots. I've also did a special shampoo and soap for the NHS that I've got a factory down in Wales that I've just given to my children to release me to do the healing work full time, that supplies these special soaps that you don't need any water. You just squirt it on, rub it in, it lathers up, and you towel it off. Just towel off shampoos and soaps. And we do dog shampoos with flea repellents and all that stuff. Anyway, I've released all that yet. So I've done a few inventions along the way. Had a few inventions stolen as well, I might add.
Can imagine so.
And the spiritual works chugged along in the background. We started doing retreats, taking people away, teaching mediumship, and had all sorts of different experiences in the trance room, from voices coming out of thin air. I've been levitated off the floor when in trance, all sorts of crazy stuff. Seen demons, seen angels. Because I'm an engineer, again, I always ask for proof, and hence my book that I've written is the Book of Proof, because I always demand proof from my spirit guides of what's happening. And some of those have been crazy. I mean, crazy, crazy, crazy. The angel story is quite an amazing one. As an engineer, I go into these development groups and someone would say, "Oh, there's an angel in the room." And I used to think, rubbish. It's all a bit too pink and fluffy for me. And I wanted proof. And I thought, well, if an angel's really in the room, we'd feel the power, the energy of it, surely. So I was a bit of a doubting Thomas. It took them 4 years to prove to me the existence of it. When I'd sat in some of these home groups, on occasion, I'd have this amazingly tremendous, powerful energy blend with me. And I remember on one occasion, as I started to go deeper and deeper, I was aware this entity felt like it was 20 foot tall and made of concrete. It was so powerful and dense. And I felt like it had barely touched me with its little finger, with a sheer power and energy. And people in the room were saying that my skin was glowing in the dark. And this felt waves of just pure love. I mean, it was unbelievable. And as the time went on, that happened several times more. And I joined a group in Hereford, and it happened there, and it stood me up and put my arms out, and I was gone. The waves of this pure love and energy going through me. And the guy running the group said, "Oh my God," he said, "I've never seen anyone channel an angel before." And he said, "What is your name?" and this guttural voice came out of me, and it went, Azrael. And I was thinking, what was that name? What was that? Ezekiel, did he say? And I couldn't make out the name.
Right.
And I forgot about it afterwards. And I said to a friend of mine who was also on the mediumship circuit, we'd work in all the different churches and things doing mediumship. And I said to her, come along to this group and have a look. It's amazing, blah, blah, blah. So she came along, same thing happened, amazing angel power coming through me, but I didn't know it was an angel at that point. And on the way home, she wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't look at me, gave me yes, no answers. And I couldn't understand why. To me, it was amazing. It was beautiful. But I found out later on. In another group I was in, we're all going off doing a meditation, a group meditation. And the woman running it, this thing came in and it opened my eyes and looked at her, and I could see her nearly fall backwards off the chair. And she said, if anyone notices Peter's eyes have gone completely black, don't panic. It's just his angel with him. And I was thinking, stupid woman, what's she on about? Didn't take any notice at all. And it wasn't until a couple of years later, I went on a trance development weekend with Carol Green in Cheltenham. And we were doing this exercise where you had to go into a meditative state, ask your gatekeeper, your guardian angel, whatever you called it, to come in and draw close to you and then step away again. And as we're doing this, I could suddenly start to really feel the shift in energy to know when they were close with you. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. And then I had a vision, and it was a 20-foot tall angel, but it was completely black. And I don't mean like a black person. I mean black as in it been spray painted black. It was jet black. And I thought, well, this is not like the movies. What's going on here? And I was taught, if you're suspicious of the entity trying to blend with you, you should ask God to send down a beam of light and ask it to stand in it. If it will stand in that beam of light, then you're safe. If it won't, then shut down. So I did that, and it laughed at me. And it went and stood in the beam of light. And then it came around and stood behind me and wrapped its wings around me. And I had that same waves of pure love going through me again. And I was gone. Unfortunately, the rest of the room had come back, and they were calling me back, and they broke me out of it. So at this point, I'm still not believing in angels, okay, even after all that. And then I was in a group, and we were practicing some mediumship to do some live church platform work. And this little Irish woman went into trance, and she gave me a massive telling off, saying I needed to get going and start my own trance group, and that my angel was waiting to work with me. And I was like, there it is again, this angel thing, right? I've got to get to the bottom of this. It keeps popping up. So I Googled it, and I thought, right, what was that name? Ezekiel? So I put Archangel, and I typed AZ, and it auto-filled Azrael. And I stopped in my tracks. I thought, that's the name I couldn't remember. That's the name that came out of my mouth. So I clicked the link, and it said, oldest of the archangels, closest one to God, also known as the angel of death, because he takes souls across to the other side, commonly works with mediums, is completely black. And every bit that I got was like a big electric shock for me. It was like a huge surge of energy, every line I read. So I phoned up the woman that wouldn't speak to me anymore after we went to Hereford.
Yeah.
And I said, don't hang up. Hear it. And I read the thing to her, and she said, oh, thank God for that. I just saw black feathers. I thought it must be demonic. So even she saw it. So I couldn't really deny it after that.
Right. There's a couple of questions here. There's one from Alex here. I'm interested in trying trance mediumship, but I'm quite apprehensive. Any words of reassurance?
Yeah. Make sure you're doing it with someone who knows what they're doing and done it before and's got experience. One of the things I've seen when I've done trance workshops and stuff is people go deep and they panic because they can't get back to the surface. And you need someone who's spiritually aware to see if you're starting to struggle, and will talk you back to the surface and get you out of it. That's the only thing you really need to worry about. Other than that, you always ask for protection, and you do an opening prayer and a closing prayer before you do trance.
Yeah, because Steph just said, when doing trance mediumship, does that mean anything can come through And how do you stop the nasty stuff getting through?
Well, for those very reasons, you ask God to work with you. You ask the light to come down, and you're connecting with the light. People who are doing trance mediumship on their own or in small groups and they're having a go, it's like playing with a Ouija board. You open a portal between the two worlds. So you do need to do it properly in a structured manner with people with experience of doing it.
Now, Steph just asked, also, how does one actually believe what they say? As they could be tricksters elements. I'm not poo-pooing the subject, but just curious about the fact.
What the spirit says through you, how do you know that's real? Well, firstly, when you connect up, you'll feel that energy is pure. You'll feel the connection. If it's someone who's not connected properly, that's when the trickster stuff starts, really. And I'd recommend you go and do a workshop with someone who's teaching it and have a practice under their supervision, and you'll get to know what the energy feels like and how it should be before you have a go in your own groups. But yes, there are tricksters. There are such things as attachments. I've had attachments, and they can be quite unpleasant. And you need to know the difference. And you need to know what to do if you do get one. So it can be quite tricky.
Yeah, a friend of mine used to go down to Rendlesham Forest quite often. And it was told by a psychic medium, don't go down this weekend. I've just advised you not to go. A friend came up and said, so he said, what do you want? He said, take me down, Derek, take me to Rendlesham. He said, oh, I don't know what to do. I'll take you then. And he got a bloody attachment and brought it back to his flat. And it smashed his head on the computer, broke his nose, finished in a pool of blood on the floor till the morning after, frightened. And when he came to, he thought, oh, where's my dog? Managed to get to the door and found the dog in the bathroom, in the bath, frightened, confused, the dog was. Didn't know what was what. Managed to get to the door and got some help. And eventually, somebody came to his rescue. And he went to hospital. But what do you say to somebody in hospital? You know, had attachment, and this is what's happened.
I do think there's quite a few people in mental homes and things who aren't ill. They've got attachments. And often when people get attachments, it's usually when they're at a very low ebb and they're desperate and they're crying out for help. And earthbound spirits that didn't cross over when they died, can sometimes connect to people in distress because they're welcoming anything in at that point.
Yeah.
And it is quite a precarious area, which actually brings me to another good story. What happens sometimes in trance circles is at the end, you have what they call rescues. And rescues are where an earthbound soul is ready to go home. You've all heard the story when you die that the portal of light opens up like a tunnel and you cross over back to the spirit world.
Yeah.
You don't have to go. People don't go for many reasons. People don't go sometimes because they love their partner so much. They don't go because they're angry if they've been murdered. They want to see justice done. Sometimes they've been a right horrible, evil person and they think they're going to meet their maker once they realize it's not just black at the end and they're still there. So they don't want to go. They think they're going straight down on catching on fire. Sometimes they don't really know they're dead, like a soldier gets blown up. There's many reasons why people don't cross over when they should. And that portal closes again. Now, a trance circle opens that portal, that gateway between the two worlds through the medium. And so at the end of a trance circle, we used to often get rescue work coming in. So you'll suddenly hear like a very distressed child or someone who's very confused, who doesn't really know they're dead. And you have to encourage them to look up and go to the light. And you see them go in your mind's eye. I question this, because my book of proof, I demand proof, right?
Yeah.
So I question this because mediumship's evidential. You know, when you bring through someone's grandfather, there's evidence, there's stories, there's names, you know, that prove who they are. But with rescue work, there's no proof because it's a random stranger and it's not for anyone in the room, but they're using you through the portal to go home. So I questioned this, and I questioned it with my guides and said, prove it to me. At the time, I was dating this lady in Bristol called Jo, and she started telling me a ghost story. So she told me that her mother used to live in this haunted priory that had a haunted attic bedroom. And when she would go and stay on weekends, she'd put her 4-year-old son up in this haunted attic bedroom, thinking he was too young to know any different. And he would come down in the morning and tell her about this lady that sat on his bed and talked to him. So as she's telling me all this ghost story, I start seeing visions. So first of all, I described the priory, the orchard out the back, just to the left, an old millstone to the right of the front door.
Mm.
And she's looking at me saying, how do you know all this? And I said, well, I'm seeing it in a vision. I said, was this lady very thin with long silver hair right down to her waist? And she said, well, I never saw her, but that is what my son described her as. So then the next thing I know, the spirit of this lady's in the room with me and is talking to me directly. And I've lost the room at this point. I'm not talking to Jo anymore.
No.
And this lady told me she was the housekeeper at the priory. And in her old age, she got dementia and became very confused. And they would lock her away in this attic bedroom out of harm's way. Then one of the people studying there decided if she's very confused and no one took her seriously and she couldn't remember anyway, he was creeping up there and doing bad things to her, abusing her. She became so miserable, she decided to take her own life. And she showed me in full Technicolor detail how she did it. And she sat on the floor and put a big old jam jar down, took the glass stopper out the top, and it had a big chip in the rim. And she started to smash her left wrist repeatedly into the chip until blood was going everywhere and her wrist was pretty much hanging off. Whilst I'm in this complete vision, unaware of the room around me, Jo suddenly grabs the same wrist, her left wrist, and starts to scream at the top of her voice. And I mean scream, like, ah! And she's screaming at me, make it stop, make it stop. And I'm thinking, how the hell are you experiencing physically what I'm seeing in a vision? The dogs are barking, the neighbors are hammering on the wall. I'm waiting for the police to kick the door and it's chaos.
Yeah.
So I'm panicking, I'm in real panic mode. And I'm saying to my guides, what do I do? They said, you wanted proof, this is a rescue. That lady didn't pass over because of religious beliefs that suicide's a sin. You need to send her to the light. So I had to focus with all this screaming and dogs barking and mentally push this woman towards the light. And when I saw her feet go, she stopped screaming. So it proved to me that rescue was real work. So it's a good bit of evidence for you. Another time I questioned, how do I know where I'm getting the information from? So I'm getting accurate information for people when I'm doing services at churches or working in groups and giving mediumistic information. But where's it coming from? Am I reading the person, their mind, their aura? Where's it coming from? Or is it really coming from the spirit world? And I questioned and questioned. And I joined this new group, sat down. I didn't know any of the people there. And the guy running it said, right, to me, I said, right, you stand up and give a message to this lady over here. So I said, okay. I'm seeing a man, he's got shiny black hair, it kind of curls under his ear. He's quite smartly dressed. He's got one platform shoe and he's in a garden and I'm feeling like it's Yorkshire up north somewhere. And I said, would you recognize that man? She said, absolutely, that's my father, 100%. He had a platform shoe, shiny black hair, loved his garden and he lived in Yorkshire. I said, okay, great. I said, he's doing this. It's like a playful telling off. And I don't really understand. And then I got the words, you're going to falsify the school register. I didn't even know this woman was a teacher.
Oh, God.
And when I said it, she went mental. She gave me a real telling off. She said, I've been a teacher for 25 years and I've never falsified the school register and I never will. I was like, okay, don't shoot the messenger. We're just practicing here. She was really angry. Anyway, the next week I went, she came rushing up to me and she said, I have to apologize to you. And I said, why? She said, the next day at school, the headmaster made me falsify the school register to include a student teacher. So we got the funding for him for next year. So that proved it to me once and for all. I couldn't be reading her because it wasn't in her brain. It wasn't in her information. So I must have been getting it from spirit.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. I know when I talked about Derek then, and he had to get a good friend of his, a woman called Brenda Butler, to come up and get rid of the attachment from his house. And she managed to get it away and said, what did I tell you, dude? I told you not to go to Rendlesham and you disobeyed my order.
Yeah, there we go.
Mason's in chat. He said, Pete, would you recommend that someone that took part in the trance to continue praying after the event? And if so, how long for?
No, there's no need to do that. As long as you close down properly and you do a closing prayer, then the important thing is to shut all your chakras down, shut all your different energy centers down and ground yourself. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, Mason's here. Another one. So glad that the Roman Catholic Church no longer considers suicide a sin. The Church of England changed its position in the 1990s. It helps people to pass over peacefully.
Yes, I 100% believe as well. There's no penance to pay in the spirit world. You might get returned and reborn again to live the same life again because you didn't fulfill your mission. You didn't fulfill your lessons that you've come here to learn. But there's no punishment. There's no sin. No one's punished if they committed suicide because obviously they're in a dire mental state where they don't feel it can continue. So you can't be punished for that.
No. How did you get into being a psychic surgeon then?
Well, I was away on a retreat in 2017 and I got into teaching trance mediumship and platform mediumship at these retreats. And I was working with a lady in Redditch and we'd take about 20 people away for the week. And as I'm on this retreat, I channeled a young girl who was on the retreat, channeled her boyfriend. He'd been on his way to propose with the ring in the car and never got there. He had a car crash. Oh. And then, so I channeled him and she was able to see him and talk with him again as my face transfigured into her boyfriend. It was very, very emotional. And after that, my colleague said, you know, you got someone following you around. And I said, yeah, I do, but I don't know who it is. She said, I do. I've been talking to him. His name's Dr. Manners. I said, well, what does he want? She said he wants to use your trance energy to heal people because you do physical mediumship. So he wants to use that physical energy to actually heal people. And I was like, me? Healing? Like, is this sat nav broke? I don't do healing. And she said, well, you know, if you're racked in pain, do you want a message from Auntie Doris or do you want your pain gone? I thought, that's a good argument. So she said, well, give it a go, give it a try. So I tried it on everyone on the retreat and they all seemed to get fixed. But I thought, well, yeah, I'm the tutor, so maybe they're being a bit more amenable. But yeah. I came home from the retreats talking to my guides. I'm like, is this real? You know, what am I supposed to do with this? I haven't got a clinic. I've got a business to run. I haven't got any patients. What am I supposed to do with this information? The next day, a lady phoned me up and said, what are you doing Friday? Can you come and do your Reiki 2 certificate? You'll be doing me a favor because I've got an odd number of students and they have to work in pairs. So I said, yeah, sure. At the end of the Reiki 2, she said, right, now you've got to go off and do 15 hours practice to get your certificate. So I thought, okay, that's the answer to my first question, do some practice. So I threw it out on Facebook. I went to Mind, Body, Spirit fairs. I chucked myself in the deep end to see what would happen.
Yeah.
Everybody got fixed. First lady in, super high blood pressure. 20 minutes later is normal. I said, don't get excited. It might all go back to how it was before. She's sending me blood pressure shots every day for a week, stayed normal. A kid with alopecia, who's now got a full head of hair, people with arthritis in their spines, loads of knees, backs, elbows, all that stuff. Everybody got fixed. I thought, there might be something onto this. Maybe I should look into this a bit deeper. So I thought, again, same question to my guides. What am I supposed to do now? Okay, you proved it to me. It's real, but how do I go forwards? 2 days later, a lady came in off the street into my internet company and said, I'd like to speak to Peter. So they showed her in the boardroom. I went and sat down and I said, and she said to me, what is it you do here? Do you make websites? And I said, yeah, that's one of the things we do. And she said, okay, then I want a website. And I thought, this is a bit odd. You don't wander into a business not knowing what they do.
Exactly.
So we got chatting, and she ran a meditation and yoga retreat by the lakes in Woodchester in Gloucestershire. And she suddenly turned on me and went, you're very spiritual. And I said, how do you know? And she said, because I'm being told. So I said, okay. So I opened up and told her about the healing and the mediumistic side of my life. And she said, she said, thank goodness for that. She said, that's why I'm here. I was like, what do you mean? And she said, I don't want a website. She said, I was just told by spirit to come in here and ask for Peter, but I didn't know why. She said, come and start your healing practice at my retreat. Free of charge. I'll hold the space for you and I'll bring you lots of patients. And she did. Lots and lots of patients. And that's how it got started. So we've run with that since 2017, up until last year when something even more miraculous happened. And the healing's gone from people with Bell's palsy, with a face all hanging down and straightened it up, people with stomach issues like diverticulitis, arthritis in spines, knees, elbows, shoulder problems. I had a lady in Cheltenham with drop head syndrome. Have you heard of that, where the neck's at 90 degrees to the body?
Oh, God, yeah.
It took me about an hour to straighten her head back up to straight. And it's just kind of gone on from there, really. And then last year, another series of crazy events. Whilst I was writing this book to get it launched, I had 5 of my medium friends phone me up and say, I've got to do a reading for you. And I said, that's okay, I don't want one. And they said, no, I'm being told I've got to do a reading for you. So I was like, okay, knock yourself out. And they all said the same thing. They said, you've got to hurry up and finish your book. Your life's going to go crazy. You're going to be doing loads of travel. And 2 of them said to me, oh, and Harry Edwards is coming to work with you. Now, I'd vaguely heard of Harry Edwards as a wonderful healer, but didn't really know much about him. So I took it with a bit of pinch of salt, a bit of enthusiasm, because they knew I was doing healing work. A couple of weeks later, a friend of mine who's the president of the church in Coventry said, oh, can you come in and fix the IT issues? The computer won't talk to the internet, blah, blah, blah. So I said, yeah, sure. I went down and fixed it. And after it was working, I tiptoed into the main hall to catch the tail end of the medium. She came straight to me next. She had my grandmother. She named her. She said, you need to pack your bags. You're going to be doing loads of travel. All this spiritual development's all coming together through you right now. And it's amazing. I thought, wow, that's not your normal church message. So I went to thank her at the end, and I suddenly blurted out the Harry Edwards stuff. I said, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I've just blurted that out. And she said, I do. Harry Edwards appeared in my car on the way here, and I had no idea why. Oh. She said, now I do. It's for you. Then I had a healing patient who used to work for Dr. Manners, and she set me up with a meeting with his former protege, an elderly gentleman called Robert. I went around his house and we're having a cup of tea, and halfway through this meeting, he went off into trance. He's gone. Came back 5 minutes later and he said, I've got someone here for you and a message. I said, who's that? He said, it's Harry Edwards. And he could have knocked me down with a feather. I told him nothing about it. And he said, the message is you must believe he's coming to work with you. So I'm like, this is crazy. That's 4 times. Then I had a healing patient contact me, and I phoned her up to say, what do you want healing? And I suddenly found myself saying, why do I have to say Harry Edwards to you? And she said, you're not going to believe this. I was at his sanctuary this morning and I've just been made a trustee there.
Oh.
I'm like, no, I can't believe it. Anyway, she said, you must come along. So I went along, and she'd arranged a healing with 2 of the resident healers there for me. I don't know if you know about the Harry Edwards Center.
No, I don't know.
He was like the greatest healer since Jesus. I mean, he was getting people out of wheelchairs walking again in seconds.
That's right, yeah.
And there's footage of him on YouTube and stuff. He was absolutely miraculous. And he's left this massive sanctuary near Guildford in Surrey for the healing work to continue on. And it's a wonderful, wonderful place. Anyone can rock up any time of the day. You can walk around the grounds, and if you have healing there, it's by donation. And it's an amazing place. Anyway, so I went, and they showed me around, and they had a healing. And the two ladies that were healing me were freaked out at the end. And I said, well, what's the problem? And they said, it's your hands. I said, what about my hands? They said, they're absolutely identical to Harry's hands. I said, well, how do you know?
Oh, God.
And they said, there's a cast of them in the chapel. So I'm now even more freaked out. I went in the chapel. I'll see if I can show you the picture over the camera.
Yeah.
If we can.
Yeah, you probably can do. Just put the phone up.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Can you see that?
I can do, yeah. Exactly.
So they're almost identical.
They are. It looks like that as well.
So I was even more freaked out now. And when I got home, I said to my friend at the church, "You'll not believe this, that I've been there and my hands are the same." And she said, "Oh, the cast of the hands in the chapel." And I said, "Yeah." She said, "This church donated those hands to the Harry Edwards Sanctuary."
Oh.
Now, that's yet to be verified, but I'm like, whoa, this is getting crazier by the minute.
Yeah.
So my contact there, a lovely lady called Kim Pilkington, she said to me, why don't you come along and see if you can do a deep trance demonstration and transfigure into Harry and see what you can do. So I thought, okay, we'll give it a shot. So I did, and I've been doing that now every week there. And anyone can come along and see it. And I transfigure into people's relatives as well. So people are getting to see their loved ones and getting messages from them whilst I'm in trance. And it just seems to be going from strength to strength. And the healing work's going off the scale. So much going on.
It sounds like it, you know, some of the healing you do other sorts of healing as well, don't you?
Yeah, so with Dr. Manners, I do psychic surgery. And with Harry Edwards, he was a spiritual healer, asking the spirit to heal the person.
Yes.
And they are now working together to heal people through me.
Oh, brilliant.
My former mentor, Carol in Cheltenham, when I told her about the Harry Edwards stuff, she said to me, "Oh, who's the third one?" I said, "Third what?" She said, "There's a third one coming to join the team." I said, "Who is it?" She said, "I don't know. He's old school. That's all I can tell you." 2 weeks ago, an old gentleman came in for healing, and he was like psychic royalty. He'd sat with Maurice Barbanel of the Silver Birch fame.
Oh, right, yeah.
He'd sat with him in trance, and he was trained by Ivy Northage, if you come across her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She was an amazing physical medium with full manifestation. And out of the blue, he said to me, "Your third one's here." I said, "You what?" He said, "Your third one's here." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "There's a surgeon in the room called James Ernest Helm Roberts, and he was a thoracic surgeon at St. Bartholomew's, and he's here, wants to work with you and join the team." So it's all gone a bit crazy. I don't know what to say.
Exactly. It has gone crazy.
So yeah, so the healing works there, and we're going to start doing a group healing session in the chapel there, and we're going to do the psychic nights with people's relatives. And one of my guides, a guy called Bernard Hollander, who I've been channeling for probably 10 years, he's part of a collective group, and he comes through and he does wonderful talks on different subjects, and people can ask questions. And you can hear loads of these on my YouTube channel on Spiritually Talking, and and on the website as well. And we've only just found out who he was when channeling him, and we've never really asked a question because he comes through with such enlightened information.
Yeah.
Like we've had big discussions on karma. How does karma work? You know, is it really passed down between lifetimes? Do you get punished in the next life for your acts in the previous ones? You know, are there any reasons why you wouldn't get punished? So, And they said, yeah, there's lots of reasons. And your belief structure in karma also accelerates it or amplifies it. So if you don't believe in karma and you don't believe you've done anything wrong, and therefore there's no price to pay, there probably isn't. So there's a lot of information there. They said, well, what would happen, let's say, if someone was mentally ill and they killed someone, would they then have a karmic debt of taking a life? And they said no, because he was mentally ill. He didn't do it with the intention of killing someone. He did it because he's ill. So, if a child stamps on a caterpillar, should they pay a karmic debt when they didn't know any better? So we have some very, very interesting discussions each week about every subject you can think of, and people can ask questions.
And do you do distant healing as well?
Yeah, I do a lot of distance healing, a lot in America as well. And it seems to work exactly the same. So the distance work, I've had everything. I had a high court judge in Brazil, and she'd suffered with migraines all her life. There's all testimonials on my website for this, by the way.
Yeah.
She'd suffered with migraines all her life. And she had one that had lasted like 3 months, and she was being sick, couldn't even open the curtains. You imagine in Brazil, a hot, sunny country.
Oh.
Anyway, I did the healing work on her, and my doctor came through and said she needed to drink bicarbonate of soda, teaspoon in a glass of water every day. And I was aware in this area of her head at the back that there was a constriction in the blood flow. So I'm inside her head and we're opening that vein up. And she hasn't had a migraine since, and that's probably over a year ago now. And then I did healing with dogs and horses as well.
How do you find that then?
I don't want to heal anyone else's dogs. So they're just hard work. They won't sit still. Some of them are quite snappy. And you end up having to roll around on the floor with them to do the healing. Horses, different game. Horses seem to know you're helping them. They relax, they stand still. Every time I put my hands on a horse, they go to sleep.
Oh.
And they'll lift their legs for me if I'm working on the rear leg or something, or if the horse is lame and I'm making it not lame, and the vet comes out and checks it after and says it's no longer lame. They seem to know, and they help. They stand very calm, very still in it, and they let me do it. But the energy in a horse is very different to a person. People are full of blocks and problems, whereas horses are just pure open channel. The energy just goes straight through. I had one that the lady said to me, she said, I've got 2 horses. One of them's tucked up. I said, I don't know what that means. She said, I'll tell you after. And she said, and the other one's just terrified of all the other horses. If I take it out into the yard, it'll back into the stable. It won't come out if another horse is there. So I said, okay. So the first one, I put my hands on its neck. It calmed right down, closed its eyes. I said, I'm drawn to the area where its hip is, where the hind leg joins the stomach. And she said, yeah, that's right. So I went down and put my hands on it, and I felt a big gurgle. And it felt like if you got a piece of hose pipe and you twisted it so there's a partial block, it felt like it untwisted. And there was a big gurgle noise, and then it breathed out, and its sides moved out about 4 inches. And she said, that's what tucked up is, holding the sides in. So I said, okay, so that one was fine. And then the one that was frightened, I'm asking my guides, what am I supposed to do here? How do you heal frightened? They said, put your hand on its heart and talk to it. It was taken away from its mother too young. And tell the horse that this lady owner is its new mother, and she's going to look after it. She messaged me a week later and said, I can't stop the horse now. I open the stable door and it takes itself to the field right past all the other horses. Oh. So there's no limitation. Energy's energy. I'm really into quantum physics as part of my engineering thing. And I've looked into things like the laws of manifestation and all sorts of stuff.
Quantum physics then?
Yeah, quantum physics. I'm big into that. And I did my own quantum physics experiments on distance healing.
Oh, brilliant.
I watched an article that really was interesting. And it was about a group of Buddhist monks. They put in a room with an electronic box called a random noise generator. And what it does, it spits a signal out every second, either on or off, or digitally 1 or 0. And over an hour, it will average 50-50. And they wanted to see if the monks could send their thoughts to it and affect it. And they did. They swung it consistently 80-20. And it's too big a swing to be coincidence.
Mm.
So they said, okay, now we're going to put 2 boxes in the room. Will the effect be diluted? Or will there be no limit to the abundance of the energy? Will they both be affected? So they did that experiment, and they were both still affected 80-20. They said, okay, now we're going to fly one to the other side of the States, 2,000 miles away, and put it in a room on its own with a camera watching it to see if the distance made any difference and the distance from the monks made any distance. Would it be a time delay? Again, would it be diluted because of the distance? And it performed exactly in time with the other one to the same 80-20. So having read that, which is entanglement theory in quantum physics, that everything was once connected and the universe burst into life and everything is still connected and happens in real time in different places.
I can imagine you're looking at this and thinking, I'm going to sort this out.
Well, I was very interested by the experiment, and I thought, well, according to those rules, I should be able to heal people at a distance, because what's the difference if I'm stood next to them or if they're somewhere else in the world?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, if the random noise generator reacts 2,000 miles away exactly the same, then surely the healing energy would react exactly the same. So I set an experiment up on Facebook. I posted it out thinking I might get 3 or 4 people. I went off to do my food shopping. When I got back, I had 40 people signed up. I panicked. I'm thinking, good Lord, this is going to take me ages to get through all this lot. And the rules were I had to, I don't know nothing about them. So I don't know them personally. I don't know what's wrong with them. And I have to diagnose them blind, tell them what's wrong with them, and then do the healing on them. And they have to fill in a feedback form, which is graduated. So did their condition get a bit worse, get terribly worse, get a bit better, get a lot better, be completely healed? So they had to fill in the feedback form, and all the results again are on the website. I published them, good and bad. So out of the 40 people, 78% had an improvement in their condition, 7% were completely healed. One of those had macular degeneration. So some quite serious things there.
Yeah.
I wasn't as accurate on the diagnosis, but I got some absolutely spot on. Like one lady, I said, okay, I'm getting a load of anxiety around you. She said, correct, my mother's just died. I said, I'm drawn to your heart area. She said, yeah, I've got arrhythmia. I said, I'm also drawn to lady bits, ovaries, I think. And she said, yeah, I've got polycystic ovaries. So when you consider what I'm doing, I'm looking at a picture of their face on Facebook and telling them what's wrong with them, and then sending the healing energy, massively improving their condition. That to me is real quantum physics.
Oh, definitely. And with the world at the moment, you can't, I know we briefly just spoke before about getting a doctor's appointment. It must be great with people like you around what can help people.
Yeah, I mean, I've had cancer patients, stage 4 cancer patients who are now cancer free. It doesn't work for everyone. I have lost some too. I do loads and loads of arthritis for some reason and bone conditions. I had a lady the other day, she dropped a surfboard on her foot and it had healed with a great big bump on the top of her foot, which would then press into her shoes if she's wearing high heels.
Yeah.
She'd had it for 6 years. And I put my hand over the bump and asked my guides to take it away. 2 minutes later, it completely gone. I had a chat with diverticulitis, chap in Peterborough, and I did the work with him. He had a scan, he had an endoscopy and a scan showing all the damage in his stomach.
I've had that myself.
Have you? Okay, right. So I did the work with him, and he had a scan afterwards showing no damage in his stomach any longer.
Brilliant.
So I think probably the best one, though, chap in Gloucester, he contacted me in absolute agony, not really knowing what he'd done other than he'd done his back in. And he was being treated by a physio saying it was muscular, making him do stretches and twisting and all that stuff. When I got there, I put my hands on his back and it was like a car crash. The worst back I've come across. The top half of his back had slid down where the joint had crumbled away with osteoporosis. And it slid down and was overlapping the bottom half. And you could put your thumb in the hole.
Oh, God.
It was terrible. He was racked in agony. He could hardly move. And I've worked with him now. It took quite a long time, but I worked with him now to the point where he no longer has the overlap. We've rebuilt the bone joints. He no longer has osteoporosis, and that's proven on a DEXA scan. And it turned out he had a tumor on his pituitary gland that was causing all these problems. His prolactin levels in his blood are supposed to be 300 to 500. His were 52,000.
Oh, God.
I've done the work with him now on the tumor, and we shrunk it 20%, and his prolactin levels are back down to 585.
That's brilliant.
Medically proven.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Does it work? Yeah, it really works. It's not 100% though. It doesn't work for every single person. There are some people you can't heal, and there's reasons for that. Sometimes it's their path. They've chosen this path in this life to have this ailment, to learn a lesson from it. I can't take that away. It's cast in stone. Sometimes they're manifesting their own illness. Seen that quite a few times, where you take it away and it comes back again.
Right.
And that can be for a multitude of reasons. I saw one lady that had crumbling bones in her lower spine in her coccyx. Took all the pain away. 6 weeks later, it was back again. Took the pain away again. 6 weeks later, it was back again. Turns out she was on a big fat maintenance package from her ex-husband. And if she was fit and well and able to work, it ended.
Ah.
So she really, while she said she wanted the pain gone, and I'm sure she did want the pain gone, she didn't really want the pain gone because it cuts her lifestyle off.
Of course it does, yeah.
So there's all sorts of reasons. I had one lady, I did distance healing with her. She'd had chronic back pain for 30 years. I took all the pain away for her, and I said, you must rest. You know, you've had an operation, basically. You must rest now. Let it all knit back together. She felt so good. She went out and did 3 hours gardening, and then phoned me the next day to say, can you do it again? It's all come back. And then told me she did 3 hours gardening. I was like, unbelievable. You just had a miracle cure after 30 years and you completely ignored the advice.
Exactly. Mason's in the chat room saying, can you help someone with emotional disorder?
That's a tricky one, really. There's not a clear answer on it. Sometimes, yes, it depends what it is and what's caused it. Sometimes I get information that explains why a physical ailment has been born from an emotional issue. And sometimes just understanding that emotional issue and the trigger for it can be enough to clear it up. So, but not always. You know, sometimes it's very deep-seated stuff, childhood stuff. So,
Rebecca was just saying, what about chronic respiratory conditions such as emphysema? Have you had any success in that area?
Yeah, I've done a lot of lung work. So, yeah, certainly improved people's conditions, if not taking them away altogether. But it varies person to person. People react to the energy differently. Some people, 2 minutes, it's done. Other people, 5 or 6 sessions before you get a result. There's no rules in this work. People react to energy differently. Some people don't believe it, even though they come along for a session, they think it's all nonsense. It's the people with an open mind that get the best results. You don't have to be a believer, but you have to be open to the fact that it might.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. We've got about 6 minutes left. Where can people find you? And
okay.
where can they get your book?
My book's on Amazon. It's called The Book of Proof. I did put a link in the bio, Bob. Should I read that out? Can you put it up on screen?
I'll put it there in a bit. Yeah, I'll put it on my Facebook page as well.
Yeah, it's called The Book of Proof. It's on Kindle and paperback. I am working on the Audible version at the moment, and you can read and see the links and everything on my website. My website is spirituallytalking.com. And you can Google me, Pete Efford, you'll find it all.
And what you got planned for the future then?
Well, the stuff at the Harry Edwards is pretty exciting at the moment. You know, the healing energy is going from strength to strength there. So I'm doing more and more work there as time goes on. In tribute to he was the most phenomenal man I've ever heard of, to be quite honest with you. I watched an old black and white video of him healing people live in Leicester Square in London, and it is mind-blowing. It's Jesus-like qualities. So I'm a bit in awe of all that stuff, I've got to say. I'm quite humbled by
I bet you
the
are.
magnitude of the man.
Are you, you say you're writing another book then?
I'm going to write another book, well, another 2 or 3 probably, but the next one will be the teachings of Bernard. We've got all those recordings of some wonderful information that he's passed on about how the spirit world works, you know, things like karma, things like if we reincarnate, at what point does the spirit enter the human body? Is it right at conception? Is it during the pregnancy? Is it at the birth? Is it after the birth? What happens if they're stillborn? You know, all those kind of questions. Does it vary? If it varies, why does it vary? All those kind of questions. We have lots and lots of questions and answers that we've got the audio recordings of. And you can hear some of these up on my YouTube channel, which again is Spiritually Talking. If you stick Pete Efford in, you'll find it. So there's a lot of information on there. I'm currently living in Coventry, and I run a clinic there at the Spiritualist Church, and I run one down in Gloucestershire in a place called Nailsworth. And again, details are all on the website, and people can come to the Harry Edwards Sanctuary and book me for healing there. And there's a whole army of people doing healing at the sanctuary, by the way.
Oh, I'm going to say, are you doing any conferences, or have you got anything planned for retreats this summer then?
Not at the moment. I've been too busy, to be honest with you. I heal someone and then they tell all their friends about me, and I get a load more bookings, and I've had loads going on in America at the moment. So I've been working sometimes till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Oh God, yeah.
Healing people in the States.
Yeah, so because with time difference, it can be 5 hours, it can be 8 hours in America.
So lots of crazy stuff.
But that's good, anyway. I
all
know
good.
you like
certainly not complaining.
I'm going to say you like to be a busy person anyway, don't you?
I do indeed, yeah. I gave a factory to my kids to release me to do this work full time. And
that's brilliant, that is.
Spirit have heard me and loaded my diary for me.
Yeah, because besides doing all this, you've got things going in your private life.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, I was at a party and I could see this girl was in agony with her back, with her lower back, and I was looking at her, I'm thinking, that's kidneys. You got a problem with your kidneys. So I said to her boyfriend, you know, I'm a healer. Do you mind if I put my hand on your girlfriend's back to help her? And he looked at me like, I'm not sure if he's going to punch me or not. But he let me, and she was scheduled for an operation, and she was fixed from that point on and cancelled the operation.
Brilliant.
So sometimes, you know, out on the street, you see something that needs help, and I feel guided to do it. I don't just randomly wander around like some nutter in the park healing people. I only do it.
It's probably will get some people like that. I've got a friend of mine, and she's a great lass. Like, her heart's in the right place, but she'll look at people in a wheelchair and she wants to go over to them. I say, you can't do that.
No, definitely not.
You can't. I know you want to go over and give them some healing, but you've got to be careful these days.
Yeah, wouldn't be welcome, I think, in a lot of cases.
No. Next minute, police would be there at your house.
Oh, I'll tell you one more story. Interesting one.
Yeah.
I live in Coventry, and there's a huge park in the centre called the War Memorial Park. I mean, it's massive. They have music concerts in there and all stuff. And it takes about an hour to walk it. I walk past, and there's an Indian Sikh guy there, and he starts putting his hands up like this every time I went past. And I thought, was he just doing that to everyone, or is it just doing it to me? So I watched him for a bit, And the next 5 people that walked past, he didn't do it. I thought, oh, okay, this is a bit odd. And he didn't speak any English, and I don't speak Punjabi. So we started this little routine where I would do this and he would do that, and I'd pat him on the shoulder, and he'd pat me on the shoulder, and he'd talk to me in Punjabi, and he'd be pointing up, and he'd say God energy and things like that, but I didn't know what he's on about. And then I remembered one of my friends at Leamington speaks Punjabi. So next time I was there, phoned her and said, can you translate for this guy? Turns out he's a world famous healer in the Indian Sikh community.
Oh.
And people fly in from all over the world to get healing off him. And you know, some people you meet, you get that kind of wonderful spiritual energy connection, and you just know what a super nice person they are. So we'd had this thing going on, and we'd been communicating without words. And it was a real, I understood the meaning of namaste. It's not a greeting, it's this, you know, divine thing going on. The God in me recognizes the God in you. And it was a real moment where we kind of built a little friendship up without speaking each other's language.
And did you ever see him again after that?
Yes, it's still there. I see him all the time. In fact, I put a picture of him on, in the book, I put QR codes so people can see pictures and people can listen to audio recordings that are transcribed into the book. So you just scan it with your phone, and a YouTube pops up and plays the audio. Right. And I've put him in the pictures there of me sat next to him on the park bench.
Oh, brilliant. Isn't that great?
So, yeah, it was a really nice moment.
So I think it was meant to meet him.
Yeah, just a really, really wonderful spiritual man, you know. And it's just amazing that we recognize each other without a word being spoken.
Absolutely brilliant.
What can you say?
Exactly, yeah. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's been very interesting. A great topic. And everybody's enjoyed it in the chat room. Thank
you very much for your time.
Hey, it's brilliant. My guest on Friday is Tina Bird. A lot of people in the chat room will know her. She's been at conferences before. And if you cross over at 8:30 tonight, I'm on Andy Coates' show tonight at 8:30 till 10 o'clock. So I've got a busy night ahead of me. But thank you, Pete, for coming on the show. It's been very interesting. I've enjoyed it.
That's great. Thank you for your time, Bob. Thanks for inviting me on. I'll say goodbye now then and go.
Oh, you're all right. I'll just finish the show.